The wind screamed across the frozen land, carrying sharp flakes of snow that cut like tiny blades. In the middle of the storm, a small tent shook under the pressure. Inside, a woman wrapped her little daughter in the last piece of fur they had. Her name was Lyra, and her daughter, barely 6, was Mira. Both of them were from a dying alien tribe who once lived in warm forests, before the humans came and changed everything. Now the land was white and endless, covered in ice. Lyra pressed her body close to Mira, whispering softly, "Just a little longer, my star. The night will pass soon." But her voice trembled. She could feel her daughter's tiny hands turning cold, too cold. The fire had died hours ago. The last bit of wood had burned into ash, leaving only a faint smell of smoke. Lyra had tried everything to keep her daughter warm. Her body, her clothes, her tears. But the freezing air kept crawling inside the tent like a living thing. Outside, the storm howled louder, hiding every sound except one. Footsteps. Lyra froze. Someone, or something, was walking toward their tent. She quickly reached for a sharp piece of metal she used as a knife. Her heart raced. The last time strangers came, they took food. And worse, the footsteps stopped right outside. For a moment, silence. Then a voice, "Is anyone alive in there?" It was a man's voice. Deep, human, and tired. Lyra didn't move. She waited. The voice came again, softer this time. "I'm not here to hurt you, I just need shelter, please." Lyra hesitated. Humans had ruined her world once, but another blizzard gust hit the tent and she heard her daughter whimper in pain. "Mommy, it's so cold." Something inside Lyra broke. She couldn't let her child die, even if it meant trusting a human. "Come in," she said finally, her voice shaking. The tent flap opened, and the storm rushed in with a roar. A tall man stepped inside, covered in snow, his clothes torn, his face red from the cold. He looked as exhausted as they were. When he saw them, Lyra holding her child close, he quickly closed the flap and tried to block the wind. "Thank you," he said, breathing hard. "I thought I'd die out there." Lyra said nothing. She just stared, ready to defend her daughter if he made one wrong move. He noticed her fear. Slowly, he removed his gloves and raised both hands. "I'm not armed," he said. "Name's Evan." Lyra nodded slightly, still unsure. He looked around the tent. "You have no heat source?" She shook her head. Evan's expression turned serious. "Then your kid won't last long." He opened his bag and pulled out a small human device, a heat pod, half broken but still glowing faintly. He pressed a button, and a soft red light appeared. Warmth spread slowly through the tent. Mira gasped and moved closer to the heat. Her tiny hands reached out toward it. Lyra's eyes softened, but she stayed silent. Evan smiled gently at the child. "You'll be okay now, little one." Hours passed. The storm outside didn't stop, but inside the tent it was finally bearable. Evan sat quietly, rubbing his hands near the pod. Lyra kept her eyes on him, unsure whether to trust or hate this man. After a while, Evan broke the silence. "You two alone out here?" Lyra nodded. "The others?" "Gone. I'm sorry," he said softly. And he meant it. Something in his voice didn't sound like the humans she had known. The ones who came with fire and machines. This one sounded human in another way. Mira had fallen asleep by then, her breathing calm. Lyra looked at her daughter, then at Evan. "You should rest," she said. "When the storm ends, you go." Evan nodded. "Fair enough." He leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment, but Lyra couldn't sleep. She kept watching the small red light glowing between them, like a tiny heart beating in the dark. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the tent, 3 lives shared the same fragile warmth. None of them knew that this night would change everything, because in the coldest place in the galaxy, a heart had begun to thaw. The storm outside slowly began to calm, but the silence that followed was even heavier. Inside the tent, the soft red light from the human heat pod flickered, painting the walls in shades of orange and shadow. Lyra sat beside her sleeping daughter, watching the man who had saved them. Evan's eyes were closed, his breathing slow and steady, but his face, tired and scarred, told a story of its own. For the first time in many years, Lyra wasn't shaking from the cold. Yet her heart couldn't rest. Who was this man? Why was he wandering alone in the ice fields where even machines froze to death? Her people had been taught never to trust humans. They were destroyers, colonizers, thieves of warmth and life. But this one had shared his. When morning came, the storm had passed, leaving behind a pale blue sky. Evan woke up to find Lyra still awake, staring at him. "You didn't sleep?" he asked quietly. She shook her head. "I don't sleep when I don't understand something." He smiled faintly. "Then you must never sleep much." Lyra frowned. "Why are you here, human?" Evan looked down at his hands. "I was part of a supply team," he said slowly. "We were trying to reach the southern base. The blizzard hit harder than expected. I got separated. The others didn't make it." His voice cracked slightly at the last words. Lyra looked at him for a long moment. "So you lost your people too," she said softly. He nodded. "Yeah." For a few seconds, the silence between them wasn't heavy anymore. It was shared. Mira stirred awake, blinking at the morning light. "Mommy, it's warm," she whispered with a smile. Lyra brushed her hair gently. "Yes, little one. For now." Evan smiled at the girl. "Morning, sunshine," he said softly. "You hungry?" Mira nodded shyly. Evan opened a small pack and pulled out 2 food bars. "Here, take one." Lyra reached out quickly. "No, she eats first," she said firmly. Evan didn't argue. He broke his bar in half and handed one piece to Lyra. "Then you both eat." Lyra hesitated, then took it. The bar was dry and tasteless, but after days of hunger it felt like heaven. After they ate, Evan stepped outside to check the weather. The cold air bit at his face, but the sky was clear now. In the distance, the land stretched endlessly, white, empty, and deadly. He saw something strange on the horizon. A dark column of smoke. His heart sank. That meant someone or something was burning fuel nearby. He rushed back inside. "We need to move," he said quickly. Lyra looked up. "Why?" "There's a human patrol camp not far from here," he explained. "If they find you, they'll take your daughter. They think you're kind, Carrie." Something, her eyes widened. "Something?" Evan nodded. "They believe your people's blood can survive radiation. They want to use it for soldiers." Lyra's heart froze. She pulled Mira close. "They already took many from my tribe. None came back." Evan lowered his eyes. "I know, I was a soldier once. I saw what they did." The confession hung in the air like a blade. Lyra stared at him in disbelief. "You were one of them?" Evan didn't move. "I was, until I couldn't be anymore." He looked straight at her. "I left because I couldn't watch children like her die for science." Lyra's hands trembled. Part of her wanted to push him out of the tent. But another part saw the pain in his eyes, the same pain she carried. Finally, she said quietly, "Then prove it." Evan frowned. "How?" "Help me find the others." The ones they took. Evan hesitated. The task was impossible. The human camps were far, guarded by drones and soldiers. But when he looked at Mira, her small face, her trustful eyes, he felt something stir in his chest. A promise. He nodded slowly. "All right, we'll find them." Lyra looked at him, surprised. "You would help us?" He smiled faintly. "You helped me last night. Guess it's my turn." Outside, the sun began to rise over the ice plains. For the first time in a long while, Lyra felt something like hope. But far away, through the frozen air, mechanical eyes were already watching. A drone hovered high above, locking onto their heat signature. The morning light was cold and pale. The sky above the endless ice was empty, or at least it seemed that way. Evan packed his small bag quickly. The heat pod was almost dead now. The red light blinked weakly, fading like a dying star. Lyra stood by the tent's entrance, holding Mira's hand. Her eyes followed Evan's every move. She still didn't trust him completely, but something about his calm voice and quiet strength made her feel less afraid. "We should move," Evan said, pulling the tent ropes loose. "The patrol will find this place soon." "How far?" Lyra asked. "Too far to walk easy," he said. "But there's an old mining tunnel to the west. If we reach it before sunset, we can hide there." Mira tugged her mother's hand. "Mommy, can the tunnel be warm?" Lyra smiled softly. "Maybe, little one. If the wind can't find us there." They began their journey across the snow. The sun was bright but gave no heat. Every step was heavy, the ice crunching beneath their boots and bare feet. The world around them was silent, too silent. Halfway through the long walk, Mira started to slow down. Her small legs trembled. Evan noticed and knelt beside her. "Here, climb on my back," he said gently. Mira looked at her mother. Lyra hesitated, but Mira's lips were turning blue from the cold. Finally, she nodded. Evan lifted the child carefully, wrapping his coat around her. "You're light as snow," he said with a smile. Mira giggled weakly. "And you're heavy like a rock." Lyra watched them, her chest tightening. For the first time since the war began, she saw a human touch her daughter with kindness. They walked for hours. The wind picked up again, sharp and cold. Lyra's skin began to burn from the frost. Suddenly, a faint buzzing sound broke the silence. Evan stopped. His face turned pale. "Get down," he whispered. Lyra crouched immediately, pulling Mira close. Evan looked up. A small black shape moved in the sky above them. A drone. It hovered slowly, scanning the ground below. "Don't move," Evan hissed. The drone made a soft clicking sound, like a metal insect. A red beam shot down, sweeping across the snow. Evan grabbed a reflective blanket from his bag and threw it over them. The drone's light passed over their hiding spot, then stopped. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the drone turned away and flew off toward the east. Evan waited until it was gone, then exhaled. "That was close," he muttered. Lyra's hands were shaking. "It saw us?" "Maybe," he said. But it didn't confirm. "We still have time, and not much. They move faster now." The landscape began to change. The flat plains turned into frozen hills, and cracks appeared in the ice like veins of glass. As they climbed one hill, Mira whispered, "Look, Mommy." Lyra followed her gaze. In the distance, black smoke curled into the sky, not from fire but from engines. Evan cursed under his breath. "They're deploying drones in numbers now. They'll search the whole area." He looked at Lyra. "We can't go straight to the tunnel. We'll need to go through the ravine, and the machines can't fly low there." Lyra nodded. "Lead the way." The ravine was narrow and dark, its walls tall and rough. The cold wind couldn't reach inside, but the air smelled of old dust and oil. Once humans had mined this planet for energy. Now only ghosts and silence remained. They walked in the shadows, their breath echoing softly. Mira held Evan's hand tightly. "Are there monsters here?" she asked. Evan smiled faintly. "Only the kind that are afraid of light." Lyra looked at him. "You say that like you've seen them." He didn't answer. His eyes were on the dark ahead. "You'll see soon enough," he said quietly. The ground began to tremble, softly at first, then harder. A low rumble filled the tunnel. Evan pushed them against the wall. "Stay back." From deeper inside the ravine, a massive shadow moved. Two glowing yellow eyes appeared, scanning the passage. It wasn't human. It wasn't drone. It was something older, a leftover machine from the mining age. A guardian robot still active after all these years. Its sensors flickered, detecting life. Evan raised his weapon, a small pulse gun. "Keep Mira behind you," he said firmly. Lyra's heart raced. "Can we outrun it?" "Not on open ground," Evan replied. "But maybe we can blind it." He looked around, spotting an old control box near the tunnel wall. With quick steps he ran to it, wires sparking as he ripped the cover off. The machine roared, a metallic, inhuman sound that echoed through the ravine. Evan shouted, "When I say run, you run and don't look back." Lyra tightened her grip on Mira's hand. "But trust me," he yelled. The machine charged. Evan pulled a cable free and jammed it into the ground. Sparks exploded, blinding white. The robot stumbled, sensors flashing wildly. "Run!" Evan shouted. Lyra didn't think. She grabbed Mira and ran through the smoke and sparks. The air burned her lungs, but she didn't stop. Behind her, she heard the machine's roar and Evan's voice shouting something she couldn't understand. When she turned once, just once, she saw the light from the explosion reflect in his eyes, then everything went white. Snow was falling again, soft, silent, endless. Lyra opened her eyes slowly. Her head throbbed and her mouth was dry like sand. For a moment she didn't know where she was, only that everything around her was cold and white. Then she heard a faint voice beside her. "Mommy!" Lyra turned. Mira was there, lying beside her in the snow, wrapped in a torn blanket. Her small chest moved. She was alive. Relief hit Lyra so hard she almost cried. She sat up, scanning the landscape. The ravine behind them was gone, collapsed by the explosion. Smoke still rose from the broken rocks, and Evan, he wasn't there. "Evan!" she shouted, her voice echoing weakly in the empty air. No answer. Only the soft hiss of wind. Lyra's heart tightened. She didn't know why she cared so much. He was human, one of them. But still, Something inside her refused to believe he was gone. She stood, weak on her feet, holding Mira close. "Stay with me, little one," she whispered. "We'll find him." They followed the trail of smoke and broken metal. The air smelled like burnt circuits and ash. Pieces of the Guardian machine lay scattered everywhere, its glowing eyes dim now, lifeless. After a few minutes, she saw something move among the wreckage. It was him. Evan lay half buried under a sheet of metal, his clothes torn, blood staining the snow around him. His eyes were half open, unfocused. "Evan!" Lyra ran to him, kneeling beside his body. She pushed the metal away and pressed her hand against his chest. There was still a heartbeat, faint but there. "Don't you dare die," she whispered. "Not after everything." Mira stood behind her, eyes wide. "Is he going to be okay, Mommy?" Lyra looked at her daughter, and at the man who had saved them again and again. "He has to be," she said. She pulled a small healing patch from her belt, a piece of her people's old tech, one of the last left. She pressed it against his wound. It glowed blue, sealing the skin slowly. Evan gasped and opened his eyes. "You made it," he whispered. Lyra almost laughed with relief. "You're lucky," she said. "Even death didn't want you." He tried to smile but winced in pain. "Guess I'm too stubborn." She helped him sit up. His face was pale, but his eyes were still bright, still alive. "Where's the machine?" he asked. "Gone," Lyra said. "You destroyed it." Evan looked around, breathing heavily. "Then we need to move." "The explosion. They'll notice." "Not until you can walk," Lyra said firmly. "You saved us. Now rest." Evan wanted to argue, but his body refused to obey. He leaned against a rock, watching Lyra as she built a small fire using scraps from the wreckage. Mira sat beside him, her small hands offering him a piece of dry ration from Lyra's pack. "You're brave," she said softly. "Like the heroes Mommy used to tell me about." Evan smiled weakly. "Heroes are just people who make mistakes. And keep trying." Lyra glanced at him. "You speak like someone who has made many." He stared into the fire. "More than I can count." For a while no one spoke. The flames crackled softly, the snow melting around them in small circles. Then Lyra said quietly, "You said you left the army. Why?" Evan didn't answer right away. He pulled a small metal tag from his pocket, an old soldier's ID broken in half. He turned it in his hand before speaking. "They sent me here to hunt your people," he said finally. "They told us you were dangerous, that you wanted to destroy the colonies. But when I saw what they did to the children, I couldn't follow orders anymore." Lyra's eyes darkened. "So you ran?" He nodded. "Yeah, I ran. And I've been running ever since." Lyra looked away, her expression unreadable. "Maybe running saved you," she said. Evan looked at her. "Maybe meeting you did." The words hung in the air. Neither of them spoke after that. The wind outside howled again, but inside their small shelter there was only quiet, the kind that happens when two broken souls start to understand each other. As night fell, Lyra checked the horizon. Through the snow she saw faint blinking lights, patrol drones sweeping across the sky. "They're close," she whispered. Evan nodded weakly. "We can't stay here." Lyra tightened her cloak around Mira. "Then we move at dawn." Evan looked at her, at the alien woman who once hated humans but now guarded him like one of her own. He thought, not for the first time, that maybe this world wasn't dying. Maybe it was changing, and somewhere deep beneath the frozen land a signal pulsed quietly, a message that someone somewhere had survived the blast. The war wasn't over yet. The night never truly ended on that frozen planet. Even when the sun rose, its light felt pale and tired, like a candle struggling against the wind. Lyra, Evan, and Mira sat inside a cave carved by old machines. The fire crackled weakly, fighting to stay alive. Evan's wounds had started to heal, but every time he tried to move, pain pulled him back down. Lyra watched the small blinking light on Evan's wristband, the signal device he had found half buried in the snow before sunset. It blinked once every few seconds, quiet but steady. "What is it?" she asked finally. Evan turned the device toward her. "A distress beacon. Someone's out there, alive. Another human?" "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe one of your people. Hard to tell from this range." Lyra narrowed her eyes. "Or maybe it's a trap." Evan nodded slowly. "That too." Mira leaned forward, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Can it talk?" Evan smiled faintly. No, little star. But it's calling. Someone's answering. He adjusted the frequency. A crackling voice broke through the static. Broken words fading in and out. Unit 34. Survivors. Northridge. Need help. Lyra's heart skipped. The voice wasn't human. It had the soft, melodic tone of her people. Evan, she whispered, that's one of us. He looked at her. Then we go, but Lyra hesitated. Every step north meant danger, soldiers, drones, machines. And after the last attack, Evan could barely stand. Still, she saw the fire in his eyes. Not duty, not guilt, but something stronger. A will to protect? All right, she said quietly. We move at dawn. By morning, the snow had stopped and the sky shone silver. They left the cave behind, following the signal through a field of frozen ruins. Old mining towers lay twisted like skeletons. Every sound, every footstep, echoed too loudly. Mira walked between them, holding both their hands. Will the people in the north help us? She asked. Lyra looked down at her. If they are truly my kind, they will. Evan added softly. And if not, we'll still protect you. They traveled for hours, guided by the faint beeping from the wristband. The signal grew stronger, and so did the cold. The wind howled again, carrying whispers that sounded almost alive. Suddenly, Evan stopped. Wait, Lyra froze. What is it? He crouched, brushing away the snow. Beneath it, black metal gleamed a trip sensor. Human tech, his face hardened. We're walking through a surveillance field. Lyra's pulse quickened. Then your soldiers are close. Too close, he looked around. The land was empty, but Evan knew better. He pointed toward a ridge of ice. If we climb that, we might avoid their scanners. They started climbing, the wind slicing across their faces. The higher they went, the louder the signal became, until finally they reached the top. Below them, hidden in a valley, was a wrecked ship half buried in snow. Smoke still rose from its broken engines. Lyra's eyes widened. That's one of our transport ships. From the evacuation? Evan nodded grimly. Looks like it didn't make it far. They slid down the hill carefully. As they reached the ship, the wristband light turned solid green. The signal source. Someone's inside, Evan said. Lyra approached the hatch. It was half open, frozen in place. She forced it wide enough to slip through. Inside, the air smelled of rust and burned fuel. Mira, stay behind me, she whispered. They moved through the wreck, their footsteps soft. Then from the shadows a voice spoke. Lyra. She froze. That voice, she knew it. A figure stepped out limping. It was an older woman, her skin marked with the same tribal symbols as Lyra's. Ari, Lyra gasped. I thought you were dead. Ari smiled weakly. Not dead, just forgotten. She looked past Lyra and saw Evan. Her smile vanished. You brought a human? Lyra stepped forward quickly. He saved us, Ari, more than once. Ari's eyes narrowed. Humans destroyed our world. They took our families. Evan lowered his head. I know, Lyra held up a hand. Please, we can fight later. You sent the signal? Ari nodded. Yes, there are more survivors, hidden in the ice caves beyond the ridge. But the humans, they found us once before. They will come again. Evan straightened. Then we move them. I can help. Ari laughed bitterly. Help? With what? Another war? No, he said softly. With ending one. Lyra looked between them, her past and her present, her hate and her hope. And for the first time, she didn't know which path to follow. Outside, a low hum filled the air. The snow around the wreck trembled. Evan's face turned pale. They've found the beacon. Lyra grabbed Mira's hand. Ari, where are the others? Ari pointed toward the mountains. 3 miles west. But we must hurry, now. The sound grew louder. In the distance, dark shapes descended from the clouds, human dropships. The rescue had become a race, and once again the ice would remember the fire of war. The sky burned. Dark ships tore through the clouds, their engines screaming across the frozen silence. The once white land now glowed orange under the shadow of war. Lyra tightened her grip on Mira's hand. Run! She shouted. Ari stumbled beside them, limping from an old wound. Behind them, Evan followed, his face hard with focus. He carried his rifle, not to kill, but to protect. The snow exploded a few meters away as the first drone struck. Metal shards flew through the air. The shockwave threw them to the ground. Mira cried out in fear. Evan pushed himself up quickly. "Move! Stay close to the rocks!" They ran through the narrow valley. The cold bit their skin, but the fire in the sky burned hotter. Every breath came out as fog. Lyra glanced back. The dropships were lowering metal pods, each one cracking open to release humanoid machines. Hunters. Designed for one purpose, to erase what was left of her kind. "How many?" she asked between gasps. Evan checked the sky. "Too many to fight." "We hide, not fight," Ari shouted, pointing ahead. "There, the ice caves!" Through the haze and smoke, a series of black openings appeared along the mountain ridge. They looked small from afar, but Lyra knew they were deep, ancient tunnels made by her ancestors before the first winter came. They sprinted toward the caves as the ground shook beneath their feet. A drone's spotlight caught them for a second. Lyra froze, but Evan didn't. He turned, aimed, and fired a pulse shot straight at the drone. It exploded in a burst of blue fire, lighting up the valley. Lyra stared at him. "You'll draw them here." "They're already coming," he shouted back. "Go!" She didn't argue this time. She ran, pulling Mira along. Ari followed, panting heavily. They reached the cave just as another explosion hit behind them. The shockwave threw snow and smoke into the air. Evan dove inside after them, rolling across the ground. Inside the cave, darkness swallowed everything. The air was thick, cold, and still. Only the distant rumble of machines echoed outside. Lyra caught her breath and turned to Evan. "You saved us again." He shook his head. "You keep giving me reasons to." Ari lit a small glow stick. The dim blue light revealed the rough walls of the cave. Carvings covered the stone, symbols of Lyra's people. Spirals, stars, and a great sun crossed with a line. Mira touched one of the carvings. "Mommy, what does this mean?" Lyra smiled softly despite the fear. "It means life through change. Our ancestors believed even in darkness, light finds a new shape." Evan stared at the carvings. His eyes widened. "I've seen this before." Lyra looked at him. "Where?" He hesitated. "In the military archive. They said it was an alien encryption, but it wasn't just data. What was it?" He looked up at the carvings again, his voice quiet. "A map," Ari frowned. "A map to what?" "To something buried deep under this planet," Evan said. "Something your people built and humans wanted." Lyra felt her chest tighten. "That's why they attacked us. Not because we were dangerous, but because we were guarding something." Evan nodded. "They called it Project Hearth. They said it could restore warmth to a dying world. But when I saw the test results, I realized it wasn't a weapon. It was energy. Pure life energy." Lyra's voice trembled. "You mean the warmth that can bring life back to this frozen planet?" "Yes," he said. "And they wanted to take it." Ari stepped back, her eyes wide with fear. "The cores, the energy crystals, they're under the southern ridge. If they find them, everything will end." Mira looked up at the adults, confused but sensing the tension. "So, what do we do now?" Lyra crouched down, touching her daughter's face. "We do what our people always did, little star. We survive, and we protect the light." Evan tightened his weapon strap. "Then we move to the southern ridge before they do." Ari shook her head. "It's suicide." "Maybe," he said, "but it's our only chance." For a moment, silence filled the cave. The only sound was the faint hum of the drone searching outside. Then Lyra looked at Evan, really looked. His face was tired, scarred, but his eyes were honest. The kind of eyes that didn't lie even when the truth hurt. "All right," she said finally. "We go together." Evan nodded once. As they prepared to leave, Mira tugged at Lyra's cloak. "Mommy," she whispered, "when the light comes back, will it be warm?" Lyra smiled faintly. "Warmer than you can imagine." Outside, the wind howled again, carrying the sound of machines and fire. But deep inside that cave, a small group of hearts burned with something stronger than fear. Hope. And as they stepped back into the storm, the snow began to fall softer, almost as if the world itself was watching them. The journey to the southern ridge had begun, and with it, the last race to save their frozen world. The storm had returned, fiercer than before. Snow spun like shards of glass, hiding the sky, hiding the stars. But through the white chaos, 4 figures moved: Lyra, Evan, Mira, and Ari, heading toward the southern ridge where the truth of their world slept. Each step was heavy. Each breath turned to ice. But none of them stopped. Evan's visor flickered as the radiation climbed. "We're close," he said, his voice breaking through the wind. "The energy reading is off the charts." Lyra looked ahead. A faint orange glow pulsed beneath the mountain, shining through cracks in the ice. It looked alive, like a heart beating slowly under glass. "The hearth core," she whispered. "The warmth of our ancestors." Ari nodded, her eyes wet. "Our people protected it for centuries. We believed when the world froze, the core would awaken and bring life again." Mira's small voice trembled. "Then why didn't they use it?" Lyra looked at her daughter sadly. "Because to awaken it, someone must give their life to it." The words hung in the frozen air like falling snow. Evan frowned. "You mean sacrifice?" Lyra nodded. "It chooses one heart, the warmest one, to melt the world again." Evan clenched his fists. "That's why the military wanted it. They thought they could control it with machines. Use it for power," Ari spat bitterly, "and they killed thousands trying." A deep rumble shook the ground. Above them, the dark shapes of dropships appeared again. Hunters still chasing. "They're here," Evan said. "We don't have much time." They rushed toward the core's entrance, an ancient tunnel lined with symbols glowing faintly in the dark. The warmth grew stronger with each step. The air turned misty, sweet, alive. Finally, they reached a massive chamber where the ice ended and stone began. In the center, surrounded by carvings and roots of crystal, floated the hearth core itself, a sphere of molten light pulsing like a living heart. Mira gasped. "It's beautiful." Lyra felt tears on her cheeks. "Yes, it is, but Evan saw something else." His scanner showed his own life signs dropping fast. The radiation from the core was too strong for a human body. Ari moved forward. "I'll do it," she said. "I've lived long enough. Let the young live." Lyra caught her arm. "No, you've given everything already." A blast echoed through the tunnel entrance, soldiers breaking through the ice. Laser beams flashed against the walls. The hunters were coming. Evan turned toward the noise. "I'll hold them off." Lyra grabbed his arm. "You'll die." He smiled weakly. "Maybe. But if that thing brings life back, it's worth it." Before she could stop him, he stepped toward the core. The light shimmered around him, and the scanners on his wrist beeped wildly. "Evan, no." Lyra cried. He looked back, his eyes soft. "You once asked why I ran for my army," he said. "Now you'll know. It wasn't because I was afraid to die. It was because I wanted my death to mean something." He pressed his hand to the core. A blinding light filled the chamber. The ice trembled, cracked, and began to melt. Rivers of warm water flowed for the first time in years. The storm outside screamed and then fell silent. Mira clung to her mother. "Mommy, what's happening?" Lyra whispered, tears streaming down her face. "He's giving us back the world." The light faded slowly. When Lyra opened her eyes, the core glowed softer now, gentle, golden, alive. Evan stood before it, his body wrapped in faint light, peaceful. "Evan," Lyra whispered. He smiled faintly, warm, at last. Then the light took him, softly, kindly, and he was gone. Silence. Only the hum of the core remained. Outside, the snow stopped. The air warmed. Clouds broke apart, and the sun, the real sun, touched the planet for the first time in generations. Ari fell to her knees, weeping. "He did it. The human saved us." Lyra held Mira close, whispering, "No, my child. He saved everyone." They walked out of the chamber together, the warmth following them like dawn. The frozen plains were turning into rivers. Trees, hidden under centuries of frost, began to breathe again. Mira lifted her face toward the sun. "It's warm, Mommy." Lyra smiled through her tears. "Yes, because he gave us his heart." In the distance, the last human ships turned away, their sensors overwhelmed by the sudden change. The war was over, not by victory or power, but by one man's choice to care. And as the light spread across the horizon, melting the last of the endless ice, Lyra whispered into the wind, "Rest now, Evan. The world you warmed is alive."